Hi there, it's Matt here, and welcome back to the show. This one, it's an interesting one. Precognitive dreams. If you watch enough late night TV, which this is a sleep podcast, I really hope you're not watching late night TV, unless you're a night owl, no judgment there. If you're watching that kind of television, or if someone else is watching that kind of television, there is always the story of a very well documented case of someone very clearly predicting in their dream at night something that later happens in the future. And it is with such precision that it makes it seem absolutely irrefutable. In other words, they were having a precognitive dream, a predictive dream. Sadly, what I've just described is, alas, very much nonsensical statistical chance. Allow me to explain. There are around 8 billion people in the world at this moment. And across a night, each one of us may have 4 or 5 REM cycles. So let's do a little bit of back of the napkin mathematics here. And I'm going to be really conservative to try to give this hypothesis of precognitive dreaming the very best shot it has at being true. So let's assume that we only have one dream per REM sleep cycle. Now that's probably untrue. And then also let's assume that we only dream in REM sleep, which we also know that you have dreams in other stages of sleep, but let's just be really conservative here. And then let's also be clear that perhaps not all people sleep long or sleep very well that night. So if we do the mathematics, 8 billion people, maybe 5 REM cycles per night and just one dream for each of those 5 REM cycles, rather than saying that there are perhaps 40 billion dreams that happen each night on the planet, let's bring it down based on those other things to 35 billion. Again, all of this is in favor of the late night TV precognitive type of stuff. And then there is some mathematics that I won't bore you with in terms of calculating statistical probabilities of event scenarios, although anyone can just drop me an email and I'll send them at least my calculations and be corrected. But suffice to say that with 35 billion dreams each night, it turns out that there would be around 273 million event occurrences each night in which a person dreams about an event that, just through statistical chance alone, will end up being a very good or near perfect fit, or, in other words, a seemingly precognitive prediction of events that will then subsequently occur in the following day. In other words, it is highly, highly statistically unlikely that someone somewhere in the world will not have a seemingly near identical accurate predictive dream of precisely an event that will transpire the following day. Which is to say, it is highly, highly likely that there are millions of these random statistical chance alone occurrences where something that someone dreams at night ends up resembling with remarkable overlap accuracy something that then transpires the following day. It's just statistical chance. I know. I'm so sorry, as the magic of it would seem so appealing. But to me, the true science of it is far more fascinating and far more enchanting. But that's just me. I'm not judging anyone else. Anyway, with all of that said, why am I about to describe an exciting new study and set of data that seems to violate my dismissal of future predictive dreaming? And I'll explain a little bit more about what I mean by future prediction. And the fact that when you end up understanding the study, that so-called future prediction remains logical, rational, scientific, and without the need for any of the mystical. This episode is supported by the fine folks at the Washington Post. When it comes to news, and including my obsession, which is science and medicine and health, I rely on high-quality reporting outlets of real integrity. That's why I'm so happy to partner with them. And yes, for those of you who know, I am signed up to the For You newsletter. And it provides me with my own personalized roundup of stories every day based on my interests and my reading history. It's really fantastic. It is my trusted news source. And if you are a listener to this show, you can now get the Washington Post at a fraction of the normal price. If you go to washingtonpost.com/Matt Walker, you will be able to get the Washington Post for an entire year for just 50 cents per week. Yep, 50 cents per week. I have no idea why they have done this for me. It makes no financial sense for them whatsoever. Again, just go over to washingtonpost.com/Matt Walker and you will get the Washington Post for 50 cents a week for an entire year. So again, washingtonpost.com/Matt Walker. It was a very recent study that uncovered how neurons in the brain during REM sleep, which is the state in which we have very vivid dreaming, might be doing more than just helping us remember the past. Those patterns of brain activity may be predicting the future. And this groundbreaking study was actually published in one of the most reputable journals, a journal called Nature. And the team was led by Cameron DeBar. They were able to demonstrate that memory activation patterns following learning in a part of the brain that we call the hippocampus. And that's a brain region that is associated with fact-based memories and also spatial memories. That part of the brain, the hippocampus, the memory-related area, undergoes some very fascinating, very strange changes during REM sleep, and particularly during a specific burst of electrical activity that we call sharp wave ripple events. And they found that these changes in brain activity during sleep after learning were not random, but they seem to in fact forecast future spatial memory patterns. I know that all sounded very scientific, so let me try and unpack it. Let me go back to that memory structure, the hippocampus. The hippocampus is a critical brain region for learning and memory in humans, but also in rodents, which is what these scientists were investigating. And in rodents in particular, for them, it's all about navigation. The hippocampus is coding the spatial world of the rats, and it's learning novel spatial environments. In other words, this part of the brain helps the rats learn to navigate. And these cells within the hippocampus of these rats and the mice, as they run around the maze, different cells will essentially code or map different parts of the maze. They map different places along the maze trajectory. And as a consequence, we call these place cells within the hippocampus memory center. In other words, imagine these cells as the brain's internal GPS, and it is mapping out the environment. Think of a smart GPS that doesn't just know the map, but as you go through new areas and you're driving through new areas, that GPS system is updating its map. It's learning new spatial regions that it hasn't seen before. So that's the clever part about the hippocampus. It both carries a historical map of where you've been, but it also can learn new segments of maps that you're currently experiencing. And what this study demonstrated is that these maps are far from static. Instead, they are continually being refined and retuned. And when does that refining and retuning happen? You guessed it, during sleep. Now, to get a bit nerdy and technical, the researchers used a new method called Bayesian learning to track brain activity during sleep. Essentially, this method allowed them to decode positional information from the activity of each one of these neurons in the rats that they were recording from. And what they found is that the spatial, the navigation, the maze maps in the hippocampus during sleep, after that learning session, didn't just fade away, but those spatial maps after learning that had just been updated and refined and added to remained very active during sleep for hours. It's almost as though when the rat goes to sleep, those maze maps within this hippocampus memory center were being reactivated during the REM sleep dreaming state. Although, of course, we have no evidence that rats themselves are dreaming. The first thing that they confirmed was something that we already knew, that during REM sleep, these memory map reactivations seem to be a very good match or direct replay fit for what the rats had been learning when they were awake. In other words, the signature memory trace inside of the brain during learning remained active, almost as though it was continuing to be replayed during REM sleep. Kind of crazy. It's amazing. But for me, this is where things get even more mind-blowing. A sponsor of today's show is Inside Tracker, which is a service that comes out to your home and they will analyze your blood and your DNA to know precisely what is going on inside of you. Hence the name Inside Tracker. They look at your blood, your metabolic signals, your hormonal health metrics, and then they give you a personalized, actionable set of lifestyle changes in response to that readout. And the goal there is to improve your health. I was looking and informed they have some new cardiovascular and new hormonal biomarkers that I'm particularly interested in. One that I'm focused on is something called ApoB, which is an absolutely critical heart health measure. And I get it done now with them somewhere between 4 to 6 times a year. Why? Well, my family unfortunately has a strong history of cardiovascular disease, so I am checking that pretty ruthlessly. And by the way, I do buy the product myself out of pocket. I don't want to fall prey to any of those trappings and undue incentives. Although, with full admission, I still use my own discount code that you can use to get some money off. And that code for you is insidetracker.com/Matt Walker. So just go over to insidetracker.com/Matt Walker. And again, if you want to get that discount, it is insidetracker.com/Matt Walker. Thanks very much. It wasn't just that these memory maps were being replayed as if they were just simply going back over and kind of relearning or going back and rehearsing the material that they'd experienced, the maze, during sleep. Those maps started off that way, but then they started to change. They started to morph as if the rats were starting to not just replay what they had learned, but they were almost seemingly running simulations of possible different, like kind, but novel mazes that they hadn't faced yet, but that they may face in the future. That was pretty wild. In other words, having undergone the learning of one specific maze the following day, the REM sleep brain of these rats was not only replaying that original memory map, but they were starting to creatively simulate and maybe even predict new paths in similar types of mazes based on statistical probabilities that the rats could face in the future. In other words, these reactivation patterns in the hippocampus during REM sleep were not just creating a replay of the past, they were also starting to try to predict a novel, anticipated future. It's as though the brain's GPS not only was remembering where it had been, but the GPS became incredibly intelligent and it started to anticipate where it could go next, based on logical probabilities of most likely routes that could unfold in the future. Does that make some sense? I hope so. It's absolutely wild stuff when you think about it. And some of you scientific fellow geeks out there, you may want to dig a little bit deeper and know the details. As I mentioned before, the researchers studied these patterns of memory reactivation during these very specific shortwave ripple events. And you get these big spikes of electrical activity in the hippocampus with a sort of a rippling over and over again. Big, beautiful spike with a ripple. These are what we call shortwave ripple events. And we've known about them for some time. And we thought that they were just involved in reactivating previously learned information. But what these researchers had demonstrated is that during those shortwave ripple events, the brain is starting to anticipate future mazes. And it highlights an important new function of these bursting patterns of electrical activity in the hippocampus during sleep. So for the first time ever, the researchers had shown that some brain cells change their memory maps during REM sleep, reflecting the experience of perhaps predicting the future and allowing those rats to wake up with a new understanding of a problem, in a sense of not just remembering the original maze, but having then already run simulations at night during REM sleep of logical derivatives of the maze, so that they could learn faster and complete novel mazes within a shorter period of time because of this previous dream sleep future forecasting capacity. Sleep really is bloody amazing, isn't it? A supporter of today's podcast is a comprehensive nutritional drink that I'm sure you've heard of, and one that I've genuinely been using for almost, 4 years to date, and I continue to use it. That is AG1. AG1, if you don't know, it's a nutritional supplement, and for me, I put it in my shakes that I make, my post-workout shakes, and it contains over 75 different minerals, vitamins, probiotic, prebiotics, you name it, and you consume it every day. By the way, for the record, I do buy my own. I hope that that's a testament, the fact that I'm using it, but also I just don't want to fall into any of the trappings of free product. It's perhaps good to also know that they are registered and approved by the Therapeutic Goods Administration. They also have GMP, or Good Manufacturing Practice badges and stamps. They are rigorous. So, if you want to reshuffle the things that you're taking, such as multivitamins, etc., you can start by trying AG1. And you can try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of both vitamin D and K2. And for listeners of this podcast, you can also get, in addition to those things, 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first subscription. So go over to drinkag1.com drinkag1.com/Matt Walker. That is drinkag1, all one word, drinkag1.com/Matt Walker, and you can check out there. So, what does this study mean for memory in everyday life, as it were? Well, this research isn't just about how we find our way around. It tells us a lot about how sleep works to improve our memories, and not just improve our memories of the past, but to become more and more intelligent by predicting a logical set of anticipated futures. And it is this structure, the hippocampus, during sleep and these sharp wave ripple events that can help better predict future events by way of this novel simulation shuffling that takes place during REM sleep, which in us human beings would be during REM sleep dreaming. And it reveals to us that sleep is smart in a way that we'd never really understood before. Sleep isn't just about helping us remember things. It keeps updating and helping us prepare for an anticipated future. And this is especially important for memories of personal experiences. If our brain can predict future needs while we are asleep, it means our memories are always changing to help us better navigate a future world that we will be facing. And knowing how the brain gets ready for the future during sleep can help us perhaps understand how the human brain learns in its intelligent way. And if we can find out more about the brain activity that not only makes past memories stronger, but helps us better predict the future, imagine the types of accelerated intelligence that we could experience. So where is this going then? Well, this is where I'm going to do a lot of hand waving and pontificating. I just get so excited about the science, and I'm always because I print journals out. I'm an analog man in a digital world, and so I still print stuff and I'm writing down furiously at the bottom of it in terms of new ideas. But what gets me excited is the idea of making the learning experiences highly emotional. How does this simulation running that we seem to do, the simulation shuffling that takes place during dream sleep, how could that help us not just become more IQ smart, but better in terms of being EQ smart, emotional intelligence? Could that same simulation method, if we made those experiences maybe difficult or emotionally fraught or emotionally painful, could it help prepare us for highly probable future challenging emotional experiences? And through those simulations, when we face those more than likely emotional challenges in the days and weeks ahead, can we do so without suffering such a great blast radius on our mental health? In other words, since we've already run the scenarios and the probabilistic possibilities during REM sleep based on a past emotional experience, can we already come up with novel therapeutic resolutions to these likely future issues? So much work that needs to be done. So, to the concept of precognitive dreaming, is it real or is it charlatan suggestion? As with all things, yes and no. No, there isn't any random, out of the blue, magical thinking, predictive capacity of dreams that is foreshadowing, like a gift to the mind, future events where people have this precognitive predictive ability. But that does seem to be instead a very logical simulation iteration that the brain is doing during REM sleep. And it allows us to become very statistically based, at least, preemptively smart. REM sleep is making us predictively smart. And to me, that capacity is much more valuable and much more impressive. And it's scientifically and empirically demonstratable too. Did I say sleep is bloody remarkable? Okay, well, with that affirmation, I hope these types of episodes, I just get so phosphorylated and excited about these new studies, and I think, oh, I've got to do a podcast on it. I've got to do a podcast. So I hope you don't mind indulging me in my clearly deranged passion for sleep. If you're enjoying them, just let me know. And with the affirmation of scientifically provable preemptive dreaming, I will leave you to go forward into your dream sleep related crystal ball logical simulation experiences. Take care, sleep well, and bye for now.